I get asked quite often on my oil painting channel, can you use these methods with acrylics? So I thought I'd test the idea out and paint this scene as a photograph I took recently of the golden hour in France, and see if I can capture this in acrylic paints. And I've got two other channels, watercolor and oil painting, so check those out, links in the description. So let's see if acrylics will work for this scene. So I've got some acrylic paint here. I haven't used acrylic for years, but I found a box of acrylics while I was moving my studio around, and I thought I'd give it a go. And in theory, it should work, because painting is painting. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what medium you use, that it's just a case of adjusting a few methods, but the principles of painting all stay the same: tonal value, contrast, edges, composition, and all of that stuff. And when I used acrylics in the past, what I probably was doing was doing my underpaintings in acrylic and then painting oils over the top. So I may well do that on this. We'll see if I can get it to a finish with acrylics. That the advantages with acrylics is that it dries very quick. Those of you who've used the medium will know that. I like the way oil paints look personally, but you know, there may be reasons why people use acrylics. You know, if you're perhaps painting somewhere where you don't really want to end up with paint on your kitchen table and things, oil paints to clean up and so on. But obviously acrylics are very difficult to remove if you do get it on something you shouldn't get it on. I'm actually using my watercolor painting station here, but I think that'll be okay. So I'm just using the primary colors here, and what I've done, I've got this little plastic tray. I can remember doing this years ago, where I put a damp tissue in first and then put the paints on top, and that will just keep this moist, this paint, for a while. And I've got a spray here, and I've also got a little bit of slow dry medium, which I hardly ever used, probably because I don't know how to use it, but I'm going to give it a try. So I've just squeezed that a little bit in there, which I'm thinking I'll probably use that for the sky, maybe. So I think I'll probably put out way more paint than I need, so maybe I'll be doing a couple of acrylic paintings, we'll see. And the paints I'm using are System 3. They're many years old. I had to give them a good mix up because the paint had separated from the hardener or whatever's in them. So I'm just blocking in for the moment. I think I will perhaps put the sky in. I'll use one of my Skoda brushes here. And I'm mixing on a canvas panel here. And what I'll do is I'm basically priming this panel, because when they're new, they're not particularly well primed. And you can still do, I've got the reference picture up in front of me, I can still hold my brush up against what I'm painting to check the colour and the tonal value. So let's put a bit of that slow dry medium, and the reason for that gives me a chance to perhaps get it nicely blended. You know, when it's hot in the studio, the paints dry very quickly. So this is an advantage over oils. What I can do here is paint the sky first, and then I can let it dry very quickly and paint the tree over the top. Paint into there, I should better get that blended. This is not a particularly great canvas, the weave's a bit open. Push that paint in there, it'll be alright. And again, I can just paint over that tree slightly. It'll give me a soft edge, but there's going to be very branches and so on there anyway. It's much thicker. Those trees at the bottom there have already dried, so that's fine. Not getting muddy colours there. And I think that extender worked reasonably well. Go a little bit lighter in there, push that contrast. Bit of mixing on the canvas. I want a dark green in there. Put the sky holes in afterwards. Probably a good idea to put that hay bale in, which is, looks like it's actually reflecting the light from the sky there. Just getting everything in place. I can shore up a few edges and things afterwards, bit of connection through there. Let's not use brushes that are too small. So let's mix up that warm orange. This purpley colour here was a little bit dried up. And I think it's quite a common method that people use acrylics for blocking in, sort out the composition and so on, and then in with the oil paints afterwards. But, I think that works quite well. There's probably some argument about the archival aspects of it, but I suppose unless you're a world-renowned artist, should you be that concerned by that? I don't know. I've got paintings that were done in this manner 20 years ago, and they still look as good as the day they were done. Start to build a little bit of texture in there. I shall aim to get as far as I can with the acrylics and maybe say finish the painting. That would be quite good if I can do that. I'm working thin at the moment. Let's go for some dark these trees. So for me, probably I would just stick to oils. I can totally understand why people may want to use acrylics, but I don't have an issue for where I am painting and what I do. I'd have a go at using up these paints, and I get asked on my oil painting channel quite a lot, could this be painted in oils? And obviously the answer is yes, of course, definitely. You could do all of my demos in acrylics if you wanted to, because I'm doing no different to what I do in my oil videos, where I'm just trying to pay attention to tonal values. Get things in the right place. Darker in the foreground there. Let's go a little bit darker. I know that's not necessarily the right colour, but it's the right tonal value, and it'll connect up in there nicely. I have to have another go at those hay bales off in the distance there. Lines there just to lead us into the scene. Find a brush that's in half reasonable condition. I'm just using some old oil painting brushes here that have been cleaned. Hopefully not got any oil paint in them. So I'm quite happy that the sky is done, so I can start to think about finishing these trees off in the distance here. So these old oil painting brushes are perfect because of the abstract marks they'll produce, because they're just not in great shape. Never throw away your old brushes. Just like I do with oils, just rolling that paint on. But I haven't got to worry about the sky milking up these darks, because it's already dried. But you know, there will be times where I perhaps want a bit of blending, but it won't happen because it's dried too quick. So it's swings and roundabouts. Darker at the base. So to get my dark, I'll just mix the primary colours together. I'm working with a limited palette because it'll just make the decisions easier. Same up in the tree here. brown there. That's quite nice. I'll put that in there for a bit of warmth. And then we'll go darker. Ooh. A nicely loaded up brush. And I think with these trees, plenty of sky holes, but it needs to be solid to a certain degree for it to give that contrast. Look how that branch just comes down and almost touches. Maybe I'll put a couple of branches in afterwards with a thin brush. I could do going a little bit darker still. Clean that brush off. Start up a new pile. Have a break from that area. Just like in watercolor and oils, connection for the painting, important. These darks up. I'll just keep all that flat, because I'll probably want to paint on this canvas one day. So let's have a go with the warmth. And just like painting with the watercolor, by mixing all this into these other colors, I'm getting some lovely neutrals. I'm going for a realistic look to this. Warmer. It's a bit cooler, so again, just paying attention to color temperatures. try and get a bit of detail on this hay bale. And as I found when I used a bit of gouache a few months ago, like with acrylics, don't add too much water. You start diluting the paint too much, it doesn't work so well. It's not the most round hay bale you'll ever see. Try some of that cool blue, that sort of cooler green off in the distance, maybe. So again, just checking my colours, my tonal values, and as close as I can. Light across there. It's quite a warm painting. The photograph was taken at one of our walks in the evening, so everything is leaning warm on this really. You can just see patches of that green. I suppose what I like about acrylics is you can kind of make some mistakes, but then never causing a problem because you just wait a minute and then everything's dried and then you can just paint over it. Do a little bit of work in that tree. So we've got some green. It's again fairly warm. Just use this rigger and just splay it out just to paint a load of leaves at once. That cool bluey green. Yeah. Don't lose my darks. Mixing my red and the blue. I'm getting a almost black, but it's just a very dark brown, really. Just paint in between those marks I've just made, which will make them even more abstract. So I haven't really used the retarder, the slow dry medium. I think because I've got the paint sat on a bit of water here, that the paint's staying moist. I'm going to go for a bit of purple in here. Let's put some colour in here that the camera didn't pick up, that maybe you would see if you was viewing it from life. Some of those corner notes in there. What, some of them through here as well. Some directional lines. These bring us into the scene nicely. And if I was doing this in oils, it would just be one big muddy mess at the moment. That, you know, you just couldn't paint in this way, because everything would just be blending together. But because I'm painting wet onto dry a lot of the time, because things are being allowed to dry. Careful your brushes don't dry. So let's try and put some detail in of some long blades of grass. More saturated in the foreground. Some tufts there. Still warmer. Thicker paint as well. So start thinking about being a bit braver and put some marks on here that actually intend on finishing this painting. A bit more on the side of that tree. little touches of warmth in the tree there. Lost my darks. So I think that's kind of what happens. That you can end up going to and fro where you paint over your darks with some lighter values, and you need to then come back and put them in. Trying to get rid of that canvas underneath. Let's try and put some of that sparkle on. So just take off some of the paint off the brush. This is just the tufts on the short grass. Is by going back and forth with it, you do end up creating quite a few little interesting marks. So I think probably my oil paintings probably would appear more painterly, but I think you could still do painterly paintings with the acrylics, just a case of figuring it out. And there's a hay bale off in the distance there, which I've forgotten about. Compositionally, be good to include in. Suggestion of detail of a branch or two. So if anyone wants to have a go at this painting, the reference is on the Inspirational Photos for Artists group. If I remember, I'll put a link to it in the video. I shall share this on my art world. I'll put all the other random stuff. Let's go for some of these long blades of grass, give that illusion of detail. Just remember, we don't have to paint every blade of grass. Just as important as those little light areas are the dark areas. So I think just a few sky holes, maybe. And I think I probably could go just with that light coming in there. At some point you've got to stop fiddling with it. Right, let's go with some blue. Muddy it up a little bit. Just by dabbing them with my finger, just make them a little bit less perfect, those holes. Of course, they went slightly warmer down here. So there we go, that's acrylic painting. Another wonderful medium. If I had time, I would paint acrylics, oils, watercolor, gouache, charcoal. I'd do it all. And pastel as well. I still wouldn't learn to stop fiddling. I would have let it warm and cool there. I still have to think about what I'm going to do with that. Put it back in the pot, I suppose. And let's move the painting out of the way for the moment. What can I do with that's the palette I was using, which is just a canvas panel. But I said when they're supplied, they're not particularly well primed. I was going to just spread that about. Perhaps steer it with a bit of red and white. And then that's a nicely primed canvas panel for a painting, which could be acrylics or oils, whatever you want to do, with a bit of texture on it. So there we go. I say that the marks left behind by acrylics tend to be a little bit less, for me anyway, sort of brush marky. If that's the word, but from the point of view of mixing colours and tonal values, you know, and producing a scene that can be quite realistic, definitely possible.